Good morning. Swadika, Ohayo gozaimasu. My name is Mihoko Chida, and I am the Cohort 3-4 leader here at VERSO International School. We're here live here in the lower loop, which is our, which houses our early years and all the way up to grade 4 students. Behind me, you'll see the Rainforest Playground. It's a playground. It's a lot of it. It'll have a lot more shade, a lot more greenery. It's becoming more and more green as I come and see the campus every day. Our campus has a lot of greenery actually all around the campus, and it's really great to see all of the sort of nature coming back to the campus as we are building and getting ready, preparing for students to come. Really exciting. Students will be joining us August of 2020. That's August of this year. That's 87 days away before the first day of school. Not that we're counting. Okay, we're actually counting because I'm really excited about it. I just wanted to say thank you for joining us. I know that there's going to be lots of people from all around the world joining us. I want to encourage you to ask questions. I want you to encourage you to interact with each other and interact with each other's questions. We really value questions here at VERSO, and so it's great to have everybody joining us today. I just wanted to make sure and just make a simple message saying that I hope you are all keeping safe and sane in this environment that we are in at this point. And a reminder to everyone to sort of tend to your well-being. I'm super aware of the stresses and the situations as all of you or many of you are working from home and your kids are learning from home. And so just a good reminder, and I always have to give myself reminders to tend to your well-being, which means, you know, physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, and just really be kind to yourselves. Just a little bit about me. My name is Mihoko Chida. You might gather from my name that I'm Japanese. My parents are Japanese. I was raised in the United States. My parents actually live in the United States now. They live in California, to be specific. And the last 8 years, I lived in Tokyo, working at an international school there. And last August, I moved here to Bangkok to join the VERSO team. And you'll come to get to know many of our learning designers and the people on our learning design team. And many of us have stories similar where we have lived in other countries and come to join VERSO, come to Bangkok kind of in a similar timeline. And so just a reminder again, be sure to ask questions. The topic today is the VERSO DNA. But if you have a question, burning question, pop it into the chat. Either I will answer it live, or we'll have someone from the team answer in the chat room, or we will connect with you after to answer those questions. We really, really value curiosity. I'll talk about that because it's one of our learned mindsets. And I'll answer questions sort of in a general way, but if you want to know specifics about your child age range, I really encourage you to email us at admissions@verso.school. That's admissions@verso.school to make an appointment with us. We can answer your questions exclusively with a Q&A with someone, a learning designer for that age group that you're curious about. But again, pop those questions in there because I really want to answer all the questions that are out there, and I encourage you to do that. So very quickly, I wanted to talk about, we're talking about the VERSO DNA, and you're probably wondering why DNA? A lot of schools will use the term mission and vision or guiding principles. We're calling it the VERSO DNA because it's literally the building blocks. You hear that term in science or medicine. Those are the things that are like that core foundation of part of an organization or part of an organism in science. And so it doesn't change, and we're using it to build our school from the ground up. And that means physically, like in this environment, but it also means that we're considering our DNA as we build our school program, our curriculum. You know, every decision we look at and we think about, we look at these VERSO DNA elements and make decisions in that manner. And why is it really easy to remember? There's 3, 4, and 5. There's 3 parts of the VERSO DNA, and the first part has 3, the second part has 4, and the last part has 5. So it's really easy to remember as well. I want to sort of go back to the beginning and say, like, where did the DNA come from? You know, is it something just kind of came up out of the blue, you know, fell from the sky? No. When you hear about our school's, VERSO school's partnership with IDEO, the design company based out of San Francisco, that started in 2015 where a group of designers came together, and there were some educators in the team, but there were also some non-educators, and they came together with the design company to visit different schools, both here, but also around the world. And you're probably wondering, why a design company? Well, the intention was to design a school from the ground up, a school that was different from other schools, and a school that would sort of meet the needs of the changing world. You know, the world has changed a lot, and you look at sectors of the world. You know, if you look at the music industry, for example, you know, music industry has completely changed from when I was making, you know, mixtapes with my cassette recorder. It's completely changed. And schools have not changed in that dramatic of a fashion in those last 40, 50 years as the world has changed. So the design team, or the group that went around with IDEO, and that team decided to come together and look at elements of a school that would prepare students for their future. Or and it's not in their future, it's our present. That's already happening. So the first part is the 3 pillars, and they'll be in the chat box. You can see them. I'll also hold up signs that you can keep track of all of our different elements. These 3 pillars are interconnected, so they're similar to pillars that they hold up our schools, the foundation of the school structure, but they're different because they're very interconnected with each other, and they reflect the global world that we live in. More than ever, we're recognizing how global and connected everyone in the world is, and it's not just because of technology and we can hop on a flight, well, not right now, but it's showing how connected everything we do is to one another. So the first one is personal and cultural identity. You know, we want students to have a strong personal and cultural identity. And this is really important in international schools. You'll see some element of this in most international schools, guiding statements or mission statements. That's because international schools are a diverse place. So a diverse place of, you know, lots of different students from who have different passports, who have different backgrounds. You may have heard the term third culture kid, or TCKs, and that term it was brought into light in the 60s, but it's really come and came back into the international schools in 2000 and early 2000s. And now we're recognizing that it's not just third culture. You know, it's not just about kids who grow up in one country that's different from their passport or their country of origin. You know, kids in international schools always joke, and you may find this as well, like it's really hard to answer the question, where are you from? Because people ask me that, and I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, Japanese, but my passport's American. It's really hard to answer that question. So if you really want to trick a kid or give them a hard time, ask them, where are you from? But this strong sense of personal cultural identity is really important because it doesn't stay the same. You know, who you are as a 5-year-old changes as your experiences develop and as you become an adult. And so this is very important to us here at VERSO. The other thing that I think it's important to understand yourself, and we recognize that at VERSO, is it's important to understand you so you can understand others and accept others. And that's really important. You know, it's not just about knowing who you are, but it's knowing who you are in relationship to others. The second pillar we have is the ability to engage with the world. And again, it kind of relates to this personal and cultural identity because it's the ability to connect with the world around you. A lot of us in international schools have heard the term international school bubble. You know, people will say like, oh, you know, when I walk onto that campus, it feels like a totally different, it feels so different from the world outside in the community. And we really want to avoid that here at VERSO. VERSO was built specifically for this context, and students, we don't forget the fact that kids are coming from this context to join our school, and whatever their relationship with Thailand may be. So engaging with the world is very important to us. And I wanted to sort of say, these are the stories you hear, especially right now, like those stories I like to read about inspirational kids, the kids who build, you know, invent that one machine that cleans up pollution, it scoops it up, you know, you heard all those stories. But I wanted to point out that engaging with the world is not just the big things, it's also the small things. It's about how you contribute and connect and engage with the community around you, your classroom and your family. And this is about applying the things that you learn in school to the world around you. And last but not least, and this is one of my favorites, is the confidence to lead in your own journey. And I wanted to point out the word is own journey. We all have different journeys and paths, and here at VERSO we recognize that. Everybody goes through life in a different way, and I think schools in the past have said, okay, you graduate high school, you go to university, you go to grad school, you go to work, that's what you do. But we recognize that, in some countries, it's a culture to take a gap year, to take a year off between university. In some cultures, it's part of nature, it's part of life to take, time off and do an internship before you join another academic program. So we recognize that it requires the confidence to recognize that it's your own journey and it may be different from everybody else. And so before I go into the learner mindsets, this is the three pillars. Before I go into learner mindsets, I just want to remind everyone to pop your questions into the chat box and ask questions as they come up. So I have a question from John. He recognizes that, yep, the playground space is behind me. And John asked, how much teaching time will take place outdoors? And I feel like John is asking a question that's going to lead into some of the DNA stuff I'm going to talk about in a minute. But John, we are going to connect with outdoors, and that just doesn't mean outdoors on our campus, but it means outdoors in our community. So just on our campus, we have a lot of different facilities. We have facilities that are outdoors, athletic facilities. We have facilities that are indoors, like two swimming pools on our campus. We also have a very large lake that we can explore with students, but we also on campus have a smaller, I'd call it a pond, with an edible garden around it, with the bridge, where there's lots of things that students can explore there. Of course, safety is always important to us, so we'll make sure that kids are being hydrated and they're keeping their sunblock on and they have their hats, but we really want the students to be able to engage in the world around them and to be able to connect. And why are we learning about plants when there are plants all outside? It seems silly to make sure that we contain learning into the classroom. Thanks, John, for your question. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is our learner mindsets. And the reason why we talk about mindsets is, mindsets aren't easily changed. They don't just kind of change from one day to the other. It's something sort of in yourself that is a collection of your thoughts and beliefs and opinions. So the first mindset that we foster here is the curious who explore. Now, I read a fact. Students or children ask an average of 40,000 questions between the ages of 2 and 5. And I know all you parents out there are saying yeah, I know, because you're spending more time with your students or children at home. But this is something we want to foster in kids at a young age, because we tend to lose that as we grow through school and life. And I can guarantee that somebody between the ages of 22 to 25 are not asking 40,000 questions. So we want to keep that curiosity alive and that mindset, and foster the mindset at a young age. Another mindset we have is inspired to connect, learning from others, valuing relationships. And you can see that there's a lot of connections between the pillars and the mindsets. We want them to engage with the world and foster relationships. We want them to have the mindset of being inspired to connect. The next one is driven to contribute. And you hear a lot of schools, they have service learning programs. They have programs where they go out into the community and do something to help with a local charity or a local organization. Driven to contribute doesn't just mean that we go once to a place and, pass out food or clean up trash. It's about a long, sustaining contribution to the environment around us. And it's not just about going and saying, I'm helping you because you're in a different place than me or a lesser place. We want that contribution to be a teamwork and a building together thing. And the last one is handling changes through being equipped to transition. Now, I talked about these as learner mindsets, things that we want to foster in our students here at VERSO, but I happen to believe that I think that all the adults in the organization also have to have these mindsets. And When I look at schools, I always look at their philosophies, whether or not I agree and I'm aligned with their philosophy, and I encourage parents to do the same. You know, your child is going to be a part of our learning community. Do we believe in the same things you do? If so, then VERSO is the place for you. So Equip the Transition is a great one right now because there's a lot of things happening and it's requiring us to be very adaptive to change. So this is something that we foster with students, and you're probably wondering, like, how does this all grow in kids? You know, are there lessons in equipping to transition? No, we call our learning, you may hear me saying the word learning designers. Now, at schools, there are teachers, and I commend all the teachers out there that are working super hard right now to adapt to the online learning environment, or as schools are returning back to a face-to-face environment. I know that my colleagues, my educator colleagues, are working overtime, and I recognize and applaud you at this point. But here, you know, you have lots of different types of teachers. You have teachers who create their own curriculum. You have teachers who take a scope and sequence or a curriculum that's been developed for them and then teach it with adaptations to their classes. Here at VERSO, we really look at learning designing. We want the learning designers to work with students and work with each other to design learning. And I know it sounds simple, but it's not that simple. And the other thing is, learning designers, I like to think of them as a coach. You know, so I'm reminded of a story. So in my school in Tokyo, I did an admissions interview, and one of the questions that I like to ask kids was, what's a problem, like what's something in your life that you would want to fix that would make it better for others? I loved asking this question. I'd ask it to older kids, I'd ask it to younger kids, and I loved hearing sort of their interpretation of the world around them. And I asked a sibling, there were two brothers, and the older one, and the younger one was, I think, going into second grade, and the older one was a fifth grader. And I asked that question, and the younger one says, oh, you know, it really affects me, air pollution. I have these great ideas. I think that, you know, we should create a robot that sucks all the air in and filters the air out, and I have asthma, so it really bothers me. I'd like to fix that problem in the world. And I'm thinking, okay, so here I'm going to ask the older kid. He has a lot more life experiences. They come from a similar background. And I asked the same question, the older child says, oh, I want to create a way that we could charge things or devices without plugging them in. Like, you know, kind of like the way Wi-Fi works. He wanted to be, you know, the minute you walk into a room, you just sort of, your devices start to charge. And he was like, because I'm sick of carrying around my chargers, I'm sick of looking for the right adapter when I travel to hotels. And it just was a great example of how these things, what kids want to contribute to the world, you know, their the way they see the world around them, the way they want to connect, that is totally dependent on the child. We start with the child and their interests. I have another question from Rie. What are we going to use the lake for? And so I think her kids are for older grades, and I think that's a perfect opportunity. The lake is on campus. And we can use the lake for lots of different things. Athletic things, paddleboarding, canoeing. We can try like scuba diving inside. We can look at it from a science perspective, look at what kind of organisms live there. We can look at it as a social thing, you know, like what's it like to go and hang out by the lake versus hanging out, you know, on campus next to the buildings. So we can look at it from that perspective. I could imagine going out there in an early morning and just having a mindful moment and recognizing the things in the world around us and taking time to have that community time together. And maybe you just share, you know, what's happened in the weekend together by the lake. So there's lots of different ways that we can use the lake. And I'm just really curious to see how kids want to use the lake. You know, when they drive by that lake to come onto campus, you know, what things inspire them? You know, maybe they see that the lake has trash floating in it. You know, maybe they want to find ways that we can protect the lake and the organisms looking at the lake. One of the things I've been really curious about as I've been on campus since early February is how is the wildlife, you know, how are the birds and the bugs returning to our environment? Because, you know, in order to have construction, we've had to take down a lot of things and it's changed the environment. So now I'm curious to see how the ecosystem is coming back to life. I have another question. Where are your teachers from? I cannot believe I haven't answered that question because it's one of our most common questions. Our teachers are from all over, and we do our best to make sure that we have a diverse team. And so because if we're learning coaches for our students, we got to have a diverse team. It's kind of like a pit crew. And when a car comes into a pit crew and you have the guy who's like fixing the tires and the guy who's looking at the engine, the guy who's looking at all the other elements of the car, you need to have that diversity on a team to meet the needs of somebody, complex student. And so our teachers from all over, one thing we look for is these mindsets that I talked about. We want teachers who are curious, who are inspired, they are flexible and agile, they are driven to contribute. A lot of our teachers are learning designers, and there will be a group of them joining us for our August Open. They're from all over, and what I find that's so interesting about them is they have such interesting backgrounds. You can't just ask them, where are you from? Because they'll say, oh, I lived in Vietnam, but I'm originally from the US. Oh, right now I live in China, but I'm originally from Canada. But I used to live in Thailand. And, and it's great to hear those stories because that adds to their personal and cultural identity. And the more complex and diverse that we are as learning designers, we can meet the needs of our diverse student body. I know that we have 5 more key learning experiences, and these are pretty quick, so I'll just go through them. The learning experiences are the way, it's the how. What are we going to make sure we do with our students to make sure we're fostering these mindsets and upholding these pillars? So beyond the walls, I've talked about it, immersive experiences, ways to inspire kids to get outside of these walls, which is funny because I'm in the walls today, but go outside either virtually or in real life and learn from outside of the walls. We have ALX, which is our applied learning experiences. So these are our opportunities for partnerships and our opportunities to work with, like an internship might be a partnership. There are a lot of schools that have a guest speaker and they come in and they talk and they say, oh, here's my speech, and then they walk away. We don't want that kind of partnership. We want people who will be willing to work with that child who's really interested in learning about that topic. The example that I use is, experts in their field love talking about their topic. A writer loves talking about the writing process. A plumber loves talking about how pipes work. Electricians love talking about the way that electricity flows and the most efficient ways of going about things. So this is our opportunity to tap into that. And I think this is where a lot of our parent group will come into play as well, because I know we'll have a lot of experts in our parent community that we'll be able to draw upon. Course Compass is a communication tool. It's fostering student agency. I talked about that, equipped to transition, confidence to lead your own journey. This is an online tool that we're developing so that you can find out, or kids know what their day-to-day looks like. They get feedback. It's sort of a platform, a digital platform for us to keep in communication with each other. We have Showtime. This is exactly what it sounds like, an opportunity for kids to share what they've learned. And the reason why this is important is so many times kids are writing a story or doing something, and the only people that see it are their classmates or their teachers, or maybe some other kids at the school. If they're writing a book, the book is meant for other people to read. It needs to have feedback from people from all over. And the other thing about Showtime that's really important is reflection. When you're done with something, what have you learned? Not just the academic part or the content part, but what have you learned about the process? And last but not least is Namjai. This is the culture of humility and compassion and kindness. And this isn't just something that we do. We don't just do Namjai, we live it, and it's part of our school culture. So those are our 5 learner experiences. I have a few more questions. Has the library construction finished? And do you have books from Rick Riordan? Oh, because I know this guy, Nyota. I know, I met him. He loves reading. Okay, so we have library space. We'll have library spaces in each of the classrooms. And the difference about our library is we're not going to just go, okay, we're going to go once a week, you check out books. The great thing about it being in a classroom is you can just check out books. But the best thing is You don't have to just check out books in our classroom. If you want to borrow that Rick Riordan book that's somewhere in another place in the school, you can look it up on our course compass, or you can go find it, and we'll get you that book. Right now, we are in the process of working with ordering all the books. And we have a big list going, but I will double check to make sure we have Rick Riordan and all of the latest. It'd be silly not to, because I know he's like super popular with all kids of all ages, but I will make sure that we have the newest and the greatest as well. Jenny asked a question, I see the construction going on behind you. Will the school be ready for opening in August? I have been so impressed with how quickly construction moves here in Thailand. Yes, the building that I'm standing in is finished. They're just doing finishing touches. It looks like the last month the finishing touches were like the greenery. I know that I've looked in the cafeteria area, they're putting in the furniture and they're putting in the seating. You know, the big things are already finished. The construction that you see behind us is really the outside facilities. So, you know, the lighting on the tennis courts, things like that. So it's just, and then the track and field, I can see it from upstairs where we work, and it looks like they're starting to pave it down and the lighting is up. So the construction, a great deal of the construction will be finished before August. Of course, safety is our #1 concern, and we'll make sure that everything is safe. If an area is going to need some touch-ups, we won't keep that area open until it's ready for students to walk through. But in general, the big pieces are done. I see furniture being delivered and plants and water features. There's a lot of work going on, and I'm confident that the construction will be ready to go in August. I just wanted to say, if anybody had any other questions, pop them into the questions below. I wanted to make sure that I talked about the fact that we have lots of ways that you can connect here with the school. We have an exclusive Q&A with one of the learning designers, so you can set up a time to talk with me specifically or talk with somebody who teaches the age group specifically, and we can answer your questions about, you know, what do the learner mindsets look like for a 5-year-old? What do the learner mindsets look like for a 6-year-old? And another way to connect with us is every Thursday we have a private tour with the head of school, every Tuesday. And he'll give you a tour of the campus, and you know, that's a great way. It's hard to explain the campus without you seeing it. It's just an amazing facility. Question about furniture. Has the furniture been added already? So the main pieces of furniture are coming in. They're building, you know, you can see these are all things that move. These are all cubbies in the classroom that move. And these were put in a couple of months ago. Chairs are all here. Tables are all here. We're really getting all those big pieces in. And like soft furnishings, the little slides in the lower loop, all those spaces are being pretty much finished. The question is, another question about what spaces are you most excited for students to see and engage with? Well, I know the answer to that. Out here, there's a slide. And I have been on these slides. I've tested them out because I gotta make sure that they're good slides. But this slide over here, I have not been on yet. And I've told myself that I won't go on that slide until we have some students here, because I actually think it'd be fun if we all went on it as part of our first day of school. So that's really exciting. The other spaces I'm super excited for kids to see is like the ball pit in the lower loop and the slides inside. I think, you know, it's going to be so interesting because every child who walks onto the campus is going to have another thing to be excited about. But as a teacher, I'm really excited about the classroom space. So the space I'm in now, the walls are closed, and it's kind of a classroom. But these walls are all whiteboard walls, and they all open. The glass doors, they all open, and we could have a big open space for us to sort of be flexible and spread out in, and I'm super excited about that. Question about robotics classes. Of course, you know, we're aware that robotics, coding, all those things are, you know, tools that kids need. It's almost a necessary skill for kids to have. So robotics classes, we're working with people to buy the tools to have them. We will make sure we have the kids, we'll have to recruit the kids, a team to get some teams going. And, you know, all those questions about will we have a painting class or ballet class, you know, really depends, again, goes back to what students are interested in. If a child is interested in ballet, we can make sure we connect them with a ballet troupe or a dance class, we'll make sure we have that because we're flexible. But we also we're really grateful to have the flexible spaces here. So we have a dance studio. We can make sure we get that happening. Will we have 3D printers? I think 3D printers are just like a thing you have now, instead of regular printers. So we will have 3D printers. We have a room for all those technological things and for us to tinker. A couple of last minute details. Don't forget, if you have a question, email us at admissions@verso.school. That's admissions@verso.school. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, visit our website, all the social media things. Don't forget the Q&A with our learning designers. You can find the details on Facebook. Don't forget the private tour with our head of school every Tuesday. You can see the campus. Our next Facebook Live is February. I went back in time. May 28th with Nick, our learning designer, and he's going to talk about how learning is messy. And see, just now, learning is messy. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. I hope to see you next week. Thank you very much.